Hi, I want to talk to you a little bit today about what you're doing when you're writing papers. If you're like me, when I was in my first year of college in my composition class, I was pretty sure that we wrote papers just in order to feel miserable and stressed out. And I remember that in my composition class, I would write until I ran out of ideas, or I ran out of time, or I met the page requirement, and then I would stop and call it a paper. And that's fine to start. But in the years between when I was doing that in my composition class and becoming a writing teacher, I figured some things out. So one of the things I realized is that we write papers because there's something we want people to know about and agree with us about. So you're writing a paper because you can't walk up to every single person and tell them about a topic that's important to you and why they should agree with you about the topic. So the paper kind of stands in for you. So one way to think about that would be to think of writing a paper like meeting a person for the first time where the meeting is important. So like, let's say a first date or a job interview or someplace where you want to convince someone that they should like you, respect you, trust you, hire you, date you. I don't know, see how that goes. But so as with a first meeting with a person, the most important impressions you're going to make are the first impression and the last impression, right? First impression is where you kind of shape the way they think about you. The last impression is what you leave in their mind when you go, right? That's the same thing as your introduction and your conclusion paragraph. And I think that that's why they're often so hard to write, because it's hard to think about how to make that first impression. And I think it's even harder to think about what's the last thing you want to leave in somebody's mind after you're gone, right? I often find that I start writing a paper and I think I'm writing the intro, but I'm not, right? It's about halfway through the paper that I realize, oh, I know how to start this now. And that's okay. That's what your rough draft is for. You kind of figure some stuff out and then you say, this idea is great. I'm going to put it at the top because it's a great first impression. Okay. So, I think some of you guys are visual learners, and so I'm going to try to work you through how to organize a paper with my rather poor attempt at drawing on this computer. So you can see I'm not super great at it, but imagine that these boxes are paragraphs. They're kind of shaped like paragraphs. You see I indented here. Remember that when you indent, you use the tab key, you don't hit the space bar. So every essay needs to begin with something strong, and we call that the hook because it hooks the reader in, right? So you want to start with something that hooks the reader in, something grabs their attention, and it is connected to your topic. The next thing you're going to do is give your background information. And the background information is where you explain to the reader what they need to know in order for your thesis to make sense. So if your topic is a particular kind of technology, here's where you would tell them in general about that technology, okay? The last sentence of your intro paragraph needs to be your thesis statement. The thesis statement is a really short, clear sentence that basically says to the reader, this is what I want you to agree with me about, and here's why. It should be short and sweet, okay? Everything else that you write can be long and beautiful and complicated, but your thesis statement and your topic sentences, which I'll tell you about in just a minute, are like signs by the highway. You're going down the highway at 60, 70 miles an hour. You don't want a lot of words. You want to be able to look, see where you're going, and go along. So the thesis statement, the last sentence of the first paragraph, the topic sentences, which are the first sentence of all your body paragraphs, are like anchor moments where the reader can pause and say, oh, right, they're trying to convince me of this. This is one of their reasons, okay? So let me talk about topic sentences. In your topic sentence, you're going to do two things. You're going to remind your reader what your thesis is, and you're going to give them a reason, or in the case of an analysis paper, one aspect of something, okay? Short and sweet, just tell me where I am. And then in the rest of the paragraph is where you do all of your explaining, giving your examples, describing things, anything else that you need to do. I think of the rest of the body paragraph as having a little bit informally like two sections. So there's going to be the topic sentence and then two sections after it. In the first sentence section after the topic sentence, I'm going to explain the topic, the part of the technology that I am discussing in this paragraph. And then in the next part of this body paragraph, so kind of midway through down here, I would then connect or use the thing that I've just talked about to support my thesis. So I think of it as like explain, oops, and then argue. So topic sentence, explain, and then argue. You're going to do that 3 times, but I'm not super good at drawing these paragraphs, so I just stopped here. But repeat that paragraph that I just talked about 3 times. Then you're in your conclusion paragraph. You're at your last impression. So here's where you want to leave a thought in your reader's mind. The first thing you're going to do, though, as a courtesy, is just remind them of the thesis. So for now, all you need to do is put your thesis back down here in the first sentence of your conclusion paragraph. And then, and this is the hardest thought, you're going to offer some concluding thoughts. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But there's your structure, okay? Intro, hook, background information, thesis, 3 body paragraphs, topic sentence, explain your topic, argue for your thesis 3 times, restate your thesis, and offer a concluding thought. So now we're going to take a little break. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about technology in general, because I think it's really easy to think, oh my God, TikTok is just going to lead to the end of the world, or wow, driverless cars, how this is going to be crazy. Throughout all time, human beings have been freaking out about technology. So for example, Aristotle, who was an ancient Greek philosopher. So when we say ancient, we say like before, like BC, right? Aristotle was a philosopher, and he believed that writing was terrible. And he was worried about writing because memory was important to him. And so when you write things down, you don't have to memorize them anymore. So he thought, well, that's the end of thinking, right? Because we're not going to remember stuff if we just write it down. The other problem is that once you wrote it down, you couldn't change it. And he feels like ideas need to keep evolving. And so if you write it down, you've sort of committed it in a way that will make it never grow or change or evolve. So writing is terrible. Who knew, right? Another thing that people thought were terrible was the printing press. So before the printing press, monks copied down Bibles by hand. People didn't really have books because there weren't printing presses. So if you had a book, you were very fancy. And the book that everyone would want to have, at least in Europe, was the Bible. So you had these monks, and they would sit at their little tables all day, and they would copy down the Bible. And when the printing press came, all of a sudden you could just boom, 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 make copies of pages so easily that people were worried that the monks would have nothing to do. And if the monks had nothing to do, they might get up to no good. So I think this was like a job security concern. Okay. And then the last thing was railroads. People were so worried about trains because trains could go 50 miles an hour. And you have to realize that before then, no one went, sorry, that was my alarm. Nobody went 50 miles an hour. So people thought that if you went 50 miles an hour, your brain would clatter around in your head and it would cause you to go insane. They also thought that people could actually like melt because it went so fast. Like I think we almost do this now, like in movies where things are going really fast and the person's face kind of melts off. But people really thought that if they went 50 miles an hour, they would melt. And then the last thought, and this is to me the craziest one, was that people thought that the woman's uterus, her womb, wasn't in one place in her body. It sort of floated around. So they were worried that if the train went really fast, the womb would kind of get moved around in the woman's body and might actually fall out. So I think that understanding that, again, throughout history, people have been freaking out about technology kind of sets you up to think about, I don't know, or to wonder, what are people going to think about our concern about this technology in 200 years? You know, are they going to look at that and say, you know, they were right. That was bad technology. Or are they going to think it sounds as crazy as saying that a railroad will cause a human being to melt? I don't know. Okay, but that's enough of that. The reason why I told you that was so that I could use one of those ideas to talk about another way to organize your essay, which is to write an outline form. So in this case, it's the same essay as the one where I showed you pictures, but I'm writing it with words instead. So here's my intro paragraph, and you need your strong first sentence, which is the hook. And then you're going to give your background information. So I might explain railroads at the time were powered by coal, steam engines. They were powered by coal. Anyway, and they ran around these tracks and they had these big wheels and they stopped at stations. You know, you're just telling your reader like, hey, this is what a railroad is. And then you're going to get to your thesis. And your thesis is what you want the reader to agree with and then 3 reasons. So in this case, my thesis says railroad trains are dangerous. My 3 reasons are 1, they cause madness. 2, they cause body melting. And 3, they cause women's uteruses to fly out of their body. Notice that I'm not using a lot of words, right? I'm just quickly telling you the 3 reasons because I can explain more what I mean in my body paragraphs. Here's body paragraph 1, topic sentence. 1 reason why railroad trains are dangerous is because they cause madness. So notice that my first reason is the first item in my list in my thesis statement, right? Just so you can see here, the second reason, cause a person's body to melt. That's the second reason. So you can guess that the third one is going to be about women's uteruses. Here it is, women's uteruses to fly out of their body. So notice that my thesis statement tells you the order of the next 3 paragraphs. So here's body paragraph 1. Topic sentence, 1 reason why railroad trains are dangerous is because they cause madness. Now here I'm going to explain. 1, the human brain is not designed to move through space so fast. It can get knocked around in the skull. And this is true, I read about it. One man took off all his clothes and hung them out the window of the train. So people said, well, see, that's proof. The railroad train caused him to do that. So now that I've got some ideas, then when I sit down to write my paragraph, I can turn those ideas into more complicated, interesting sentences. Okay. Body paragraph 2, topic sentence. Additionally, that's called a signal word where I'm kind of signaling to my reader, here's my second reason. Railroad trains are dangerous because they can cause a person's body to melt. So here I would say the speed of a train overwhelms the body. It causes it to break apart. That's what melting is. No one has seen it happen, but I think it could. I'm not sure. I mean, again, we look at this and it seems a little crazy, but okay. Your third body paragraph, again, topic sentence. Finally, another signal phrase to tell the reader, this is the last one, okay? Railroad trains can cause a woman's uterus to fly out of her body. And here, this is not true, none of it's true, but people believe that the uterus moves around inside of a woman's body anyway, so it's not safely secured, and that the fast movement of the train will cause it to move and possibly fall out. Now my conclusion paragraph. So remember that the first sentence of the conclusion paragraph reminds the reader of the thesis. So the topic sentence, so the first sentence of the conclusion paragraph is, as I've explained, riding railroad cars is extremely dangerous. Tweaked it a little bit, that's okay, because it can cause madness, body melting, and women's uteruses to fly out of their body. Now I'm ready for my concluding thought. So I gave you a couple of possibilities that you can modify and use for your paper if you'd like. One is that I could propose a way to make railroads more safe. I could suggest maybe the trains should go slower, or that people should use maybe seatbelts on the trains, or maybe we should just all go back to horse-drawn carriages because those don't go quite as fast. Another thing I could do, so these are 3 different things, you don't have to do all 3, you could pick one, would be to emphasize one of the reasons you gave, to kind of go back and really stress it some more. So I could say, if women's uteruses fall out of their bodies, they won't be able to have babies, and that's going to be the end of humankind. Or I could connect my topic to something that's related. So for example, I could say, these concerns about railroad cars should alert us to the danger of these newfangled automobiles. And then I could talk about automobiles by drawing an analogy, by comparing automobiles to railroad cars. So I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And good luck writing your paper.